Continuing from the last chapter, Lin Dong acquired the rune of the Heavenly Talisman Tree, presenting him with a chance to ascend to the rank of a Heavenly Talisman Master. However, someone attempted to seize this opportunity, only to be repelled by Lin Dong's Nirvana stage blood spirit puppet. At this moment, the main hall's attention was diverted due to the sudden entrance of Lin Dong and his companions. Upon seeing Lin Dong, Ling Ji, Lu Yuan, and the others were somewhat pleased. Regardless of the circumstances, Lin Dong had come from Yang City with them, and compared to the others, he was undoubtedly more trustworthy. As for Yuewen, Wu Mo, and the group of black-clad figures, they merely glanced at him indifferently. No matter how exceptional Lin Dong's performance outside Thunder Rock Valley was, in their eyes, he was still of little consequence. Senior Brother Mu? That's the guy who snatched the Heavenly Talisman Tree. Just as they were about to avert their gaze, a Nirvana stage expert among the black-clad figures, who had previously crossed paths with Lin Dong, fixed a vicious stare on him and spoke to a skinny figure ahead. Hearing this, everyone in the main hall, except for Lin Dong's group, was momentarily stunned. Their gazes turned somewhat peculiar. This black-clad man's strength was nearly on par with Yuewen and the others. For Lin Dong to have snatched something from him, it was hard to tell whether Lin Dong was exceptionally capable or the black-clad man was merely incompetent. Peak of the creation stage, the man addressed as Senior Brother Mu slightly lifted his head, revealing a somewhat pale and sinister face. He glanced at Lin Dong and spoke flatly. Senior Brother Mu, this guy has a spirit puppet in his possession, extremely formidable. I've fought against it. The black-clad man quickly explained, seemingly sensing displeasure and coldness in Senior Brother Mu's tone. Spirit puppet? The mention of this caused a noticeable stir among many in the main hall. They now looked at Lin Dong with a newfound seriousness. Everyone knew the strength of a spirit puppet. Even the weakest ones could rival a Nirvana stage expert. This meant that this seemingly ordinary young man, who was only at the peak of the creation stage, actually had such a powerful trump card. Ling Ji and Lu Yuan exchanged glances, each seeing intense shock in the other's eyes. Only now did they fully understand why Lin Dong, coming from a minor dynasty and merely at the peak of the creation stage, was unafraid even when facing them. It turned out he had such a formidable trump card in his hand. It seems we underestimated this guy. Yuewen and Wu Mo also had expressions of deep surprise. They had never imagined that Lin Dong would hide his strength so well. Senior Brother Mu gave Lin Dong a long, meaningful look before withdrawing his gaze. In a voice only his companions could hear, he said, "Ignore him for now. Our main goal is to obtain the ancient key. Before that, there's no need to provoke others over the Heavenly Talisman Tree. Let's deal with everything after we secure the ancient key." Had Lin Dong been an ordinary person at the peak of the creation stage, Senior Brother Mu might have already killed him on the spot. However, the fact that this seemingly ordinary person possessed a formidable spirit puppet forced him to reconsider. Under normal circumstances, even with Lin Dong having a spirit puppet for protection, the demonic Rock Dynasty wouldn't fear him. They could simply send someone to hold off the puppet, making Lin Dong easy prey. But right now, that wasn't feasible. They hadn't brought many people on this trip, and the Xianbing Dynasty and Great Wu Dynasty were also eyeing them like hawks. They couldn't spare anyone to deal with Lin Dong. So, despite their usual arrogance and overbearing nature, even the demonic Rock Dynasty had to show restraint. Upon hearing Senior Brother Mu's words, the black-clad Nirvana stage expert who had previously suffered under Lin Dong's hands, although unwilling, could only grit his teeth and nod. He silently vowed that once the ancient key was in their possession, he would make Lin Dong pay for offending the demonic Rock Dynasty. Despite the intense stares from the crowd, Lin Dong remained calm and composed. He didn't display any undue arrogance. While the blood spirit puppet made him fearless against these Nirvana stage experts, it wasn't enough to make them fear him. At best, they would only be a bit more cautious, no longer dismissing him as they had earlier. The atmosphere in the main hall quieted slightly due to this brief interlude, but soon returned to normal. The intense gazes once again focused on the glowing orb deep within the hall. Lin Dong's gaze also lingered on the orb. However, his eyes soon narrowed as he looked around and noticed the walls of the hall were lined with lifelike stone statues. What struck him as odd was that these statues all seemed to depict the same person, just in various poses. Huayan Wuemo, this time, our demonic rock dynasty is determined to obtain the ancient key. If you two are willing to give us this opportunity, I believe our dynasty could form a good relationship with your two dynasties. The skinny man known as Senior Brother Mu suddenly said as Lin Dong's gaze swept across the surroundings. Hearing this, Hua Yun and Wu Mo both responded with insincere smiles. Chen Mu, that's quite a bold statement. We've put in a lot of effort for this ancient key. It's a bit too ridiculous to expect us to just hand it over with a single request, isn't it? The demonic rock dynasty was indeed formidable, but Hua Yun and Wu Mo were far from ordinary. Chen Mu's attempt to use mere words to make them submit was clearly wishful thinking. Moreover, in the current situation, their two dynasties had the most people. The demonic rock dynasty, on the other hand, had only brought 4 people led by Chen Mu. Among them, apart from the one who had previously fought with Lin Dong being at the Nirvana stage, the other 3 were only at the half-step Nirvana level, which was clearly a disadvantage compared to their group. Don't be ungrateful. The Great Bone Dynasty was not much weaker than you. Yet after offending our demonic rock dynasty, they were utterly annihilated. A Nirvana stage expert beside Chen Mu said coldly, his words filled with a threatening tone. Try then. Do you really think your demonic rock dynasty can do as it pleases in this ancient battlefield? Hua Yun, clearly angered by the tone, replied with a chilling glare. As Hua Yun's tone turned hostile, the experts from the Xianbing dynasty behind him also showed signs of displeasure, with cold auras faintly rising around them. Seeing the hall's atmosphere becoming tense, Ling Ji, Lu Yuan, and the others appeared somewhat nervous. Compared to these powerful dynasties, their strength was indeed lacking. Here, only Nirvana stage experts had the right to speak. This realization made them grit their teeth with determination. After this event, they would strive to break through to the Nirvana stage. Only by reaching the Nirvana stage could one gain access to the rare resources of this ancient battlefield. Chen Mu, your demonic rock dynasty may be strong, but today you only have 2 Nirvana stage experts, Wu Mo remarked calmly, clearly implying that the people Chen Mu brought weren't enough to intimidate them. Do you two really count as true Nirvana stage experts? Chen Mu suddenly smiled strangely at Wu Mo's words. A strange golden light faintly flickered in his eyes. You two probably just scraped together 200,000 Nirvana pills to reach the Nirvana stage. When I broke through to the Nirvana stage, I used a full 500,000 Nirvana pills. If you think you can compete with me, you're dreaming. Chen Mu's face turned cold as he stepped forward. A dense golden light suddenly burst out from every pore on his body, and at the same time, an extremely powerful aura swept across the hall. A formidable pressure enveloped the entire hall. 500,000 Nirvana pills. Hearing this number, almost everyone in the hall had a change in their expressions. Even Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew well that the more Nirvana pills one used when reaching the Nirvana stage, the more abundant the Nirvana chi in their body would be, which was a key indicator of strength before overcoming the Nirvana tribulation. Moreover, judging by the powerful aura emanating from Chen Mu, he was indeed far stronger than the Nirvana stage expert beside him, and even more powerful than Hua Yun and Wu Mo. It seemed that the demonic rock dynasty truly was wealthy and powerful. 500,000 Nirvana pills. That was an astronomical figure in Lin Dong's eyes. As his mind reeled, Lin Dong's steps brought him before one of the statues. His fingers lightly brushed over it, and his eyes instantly narrowed, filled with intense surprise. Lin Dong, be careful. This hall seems a bit strange. There's a very subtle fluctuation coming from these statues. Little Mink's voice suddenly sounded in his mind as surprise and doubt flickered in his eyes. Lin Dong discreetly withdrew his finger and then signaled Mo Ling with a look. Seeing this, Mo Ling seemed to understand something as well. He immediately led their group quietly back to the entrance of the hall, appearing as if they didn't dare to get involved in the conflict, which avoided drawing attention. The hall was still somewhat quiet, likely because everyone was still stunned by Chunmu's claim of using 500,000 Nirvana pills. Seeing this, a cold smile flashed across his sinister face. He then turned around and strode toward the glowing orb deep within the hall. Just as Yuewen and Wu Mo snapped back to their senses, he reached out and grabbed into the orb. Yuewen and Wu Mo finally came to their senses. Their expressions changed instantly as they prepared to make a move. However, it was clearly too late. Chunmu's hand had already reached the key within the glowing orb. Yet, to everyone's surprise, his hand passed right through it, as if the light was just an illusion. Crack! This sight caused everyone to be stunned. Then, as they stood in bewilderment, a faint cracking sound suddenly emanated from within the hall. At the sound, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed sharply because he noticed the statues on the walls slowly standing up. At the same time, each one began to emit an aura that was no weaker than that of a Nirvana stage expert. That's not the ancient key. It's the trigger for a mechanism. This thought flashed through Lin Dong's mind like lightning. The entire hall seemed to tremble at this moment. The statues that had been embedded in the walls appeared to come to life, slowly standing up. What was most shocking, however, was that the energy fluctuations emitted from these statues were not any weaker than those of Nirvana stage experts. This sudden turn of events first shocked everyone, and then they gasped. There were over a dozen statues emerging from the walls, which meant they were facing the equivalent of more than a dozen Nirvana experts. Retreat! Yuewen, Wu Mo, and the others' faces changed drastically as they urgently shouted. A dozen statues equivalent to Nirvana experts were enough to annihilate them all. Upon hearing their shouts, the people from the Xianbing Dynasty and Great Wu Dynasty also hastily retreated, intending to leave the hall. However, just as they were about to move, two statues landed heavily at the hall's entrance, blocking it completely. Seeing this, everyone's hearts sank. They suddenly realized that this hall was a trap. Anyone who touched the key within the glowing orb would activate the mechanism, causing these statues to unleash their terrifying power to slaughter everyone inside. Lin Dong also frowned as he watched this scene. The sight of over a dozen statues comparable to Nirvana stage experts made even his scalp tingle. At the same time, he glanced at Mo Ling and the others and let out a slight sigh of relief. Thanks to his prior warning, they had already exited the hall, so they were clearly safe now. This was good, as it spared him from distractions. Facing these statues, even Lin Dong dared not be distracted for a moment. Lin Dong, Mo Ling, and his group, standing outside the stone hall, were also terrified by the scene. Seeing the terrifying statues, they dared not step back inside and could only shout anxiously from outside. Peeking through the gaps between the large bodies of the statues, Lin Dong made a hand signal to Mo Ling. Upon seeing this, Mo Ling's expression changed. Lin Dong was telling them to act according to the situation and to leave immediately if things went wrong. Gritting his teeth, Mo Ling hesitated for a moment before nodding. He understood that staying would be of no help to Lin Dong and would only become a burden. Watching Mo Ling and the others retreat slowly, Lin Dong finally turned his gaze back to the now dire situation in the hall. At this moment, the hall was completely surrounded by the statues, creating a feeling of being utterly trapped with no way out. Of course, the expressions of the others in the hall weren't looking good either. Even Chunmu, who boasted of using 500,000 Nirvana pills to reach the Nirvana stage, had a rather grim face at this moment. He understood that facing 15 statues comparable to Nirvana stage experts, even his so-called strength from using 500,000 Nirvana pills wouldn't matter. Even if he had used 1,000,000, he'd likely end up as pulverized meat under a flurry of blows. Brother Lin Dong, at this moment, it might be better if we band together, said Ling Ji and Lu Yuan, who had cleverly led their people over to Lin Dong's side. Lin Dong found this both amusing and slightly annoying, as it was clear these guys were hoping to benefit from the protection of his spirit puppet. However, Even his blood spirit puppet might not be able to do much in this situation. After all, these statues were each comparable to a Nirvana stage expert. The hall was now essentially divided into 3 groups. One consisting of Lin Dong and the people from Yang City, another being the forces of the Xianbing Dynasty and Great Wu Dynasty, and the last one was the Demonic Rock Dynasty. But the greatest threat they all had to defend against were the Nirvana statues surrounding them, watching like predators. The tense atmosphere in the hall didn't last long before the statues suddenly began to move, their heavy steps thundering as they charged toward the people inside the hall with tremendous force. Perhaps because Lin Dong's group posed the smallest threat, only 2 of the Nirvana statues charged towards them. Even so, this was enough to make Ling Ji and the others look serious. I'll hold off one. The other one is up to you too. The rest of you, step back. Lin Dong said in a low voice to Ling Ji and Lu Yuan as he eyed the approaching statues with intense momentum. All right. Seeing Lin Dong step up to block one of the statues, Ling Ji and Lu Yuan gritted their teeth. They were both quasi-Nirvana experts, and if they worked together, they might be able to barely hold off a Nirvana expert. Their only hope was that no more statues would come their way. Otherwise, they might indeed face total annihilation. Lin Dong didn't waste any more words. As the statue with its powerful aura rushed towards him, he moved swiftly, darting out and using the supreme Azure Sky Walk, transforming into a wisp of green smoke to lure the statue away. At the same time, Ling Ji and Lu Yuan pushed their primordial energy to its limits, clashing directly with the other Nirvana statue. The statue swung its massive stone fists violently at Lin Dong. The air compressed under its fists, forming an invisible gust that viciously swept toward Lin Dong. At this moment, Lin Dong's expression was extremely serious. Under his skin, golden light surged rapidly. Yet, despite this, the terrifying gust still made his skin sting. It was clear that if it were a half-step Nirvana expert in his place, just these winds alone could have killed them. Lin Dong had no intention of meeting the statue's power head-on. Utilizing the supreme Azure Sky Walk, he continuously dodged the fierce attacks from the statue. Although the oppressive winds caused his skin to ache, he could feel that under this intense pressure, the golden light beneath his skin was becoming even more solid. Lin Dong, there's no way this is a dead end. There must be a way to break the trap. Moreover, the ancient key hasn't appeared yet, which is certainly related to breaking the trap. The key to breaking the trap must be within this hall. As Lin Dong dodged the statue's attacks, Little Mink's voice rang out in his mind. Hearing Little Mink's words, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. Little Mink's experience was incredibly profound, far beyond his own, so he always trusted its words. His gaze began to roam around the hall. The hall was currently filled with chaotic fighting. In the area where the Xianbing Dynasty and Demonic Rock Dynasty were located, most of the Nirvana statues were attacking them because the energy fluctuations from their side were the most intense. They were struggling under this assault. Even Shenmue was being forced into a difficult situation by 3 Nirvana statues, barely managing to avoid injury thanks to his exceptional agility techniques. Everyone seemed completely entangled, unable to spare even a shred of focus elsewhere. If things continued like this, the worst-case scenario might happen. After all, they were humans, and humans tire. These statues, however, did not. They would relentlessly attack until they had killed every last one of them. Lin Dong lightly tapped his toes in midair, smoothly dodging the fierce punch wind from the Nirvana statue. His gaze then suddenly froze. Lin Dong's eyes were fixed on the central wall of the hall. There another statue was embedded, slightly different from the others. It was the only one facing directly downward at the hall, while the other statues were depicted in various side profiles. These statues all seemed to resemble the same person. Staring at the various statues expressing emotions such as anger, joy, and surprise, Lin Dong pondered. Could these statues have been molded after the same individual? Lin Dong's gaze returned to the statue. Unlike the others, this one had not awakened to launch an attack. It remained sitting quietly, observing the life and death battles unfolding in the hall. His eyes flickered, his mind racing with thoughts. In the next instant, he gritted his teeth, his body suddenly moving, speeding up dramatically as he dashed straight toward the statue. Behind him, the statue that had been attacking him seemed to sense something, its heavy footsteps thundering as it pursued Lin Dong relentlessly. Lin Dong's figure shot across the hall like an arrow, appearing before the statue at an astonishing speed. Then, with a fierce determination, he punched the statue without any hesitation. Golden light surged around his fist. Under the force of his ferocious punch, cracks immediately spread across the statue, and with a loud bang, it shattered into pieces. As the debris exploded outward, a glowing orb suddenly shot out from the statue. At the moment this orb appeared, all the statues in the hall abruptly froze, as if they had once again turned into mere sculptures. This sudden development left everyone stunned for a moment. Then, with rapid eye movements, they all quickly turned their attention to the peculiar glowing orb that had just emerged. Lin Dong, grab that thing. That's the ancient key. Little Mink's excited voice resonated in Lin Dong's mind, bringing a flash of joy to his eyes. He had been right. The appearance of the orb was abrupt, but everyone in the room was highly perceptive. The instant the orb appeared, numerous eyes immediately darted toward it, and all their pupils shrank. The orb seemed to pulsate, with a delicate key faintly visible inside, exuding a strange ripple that sent a tremor through everyone's hearts. The ancient key. The thought shot through everyone's minds like a streak of fire. In the next moment, almost everyone sprang into action, completely ignoring the Nirvana statues still pursuing them, lunging desperately toward the orb. Seeing this, Lin Dong smirked coldly. He had been the one to break this trap. How could he let these guys enjoy the final reward? The moment Little Mink spoke up, Lin Dong had already darted forward with quick reflexes. Being the closest to the orb, he naturally reached it before anyone else, grabbing it in one swift motion. You brat, courting death? The fastest among them, Chen Mu, saw the orb snatched by Lin Dong just as it was within his grasp. His sinister face immediately contorted with rage, and he bellowed. To him, Lin Dong was hardly worth mentioning. If it weren't for the spirit puppet, he would have long since killed him outright. But what he hadn't expected was that after offending the demonic rock dynasty, Lin Dong didn't flee for his life. Instead, he dared to snatch the prize from under his nose at such a moment. This act of defiance undoubtedly enraged Chen Mu to the extreme. However, Chen Mu's vicious threats clearly had no effect on Lin Dong. If he were truly afraid of the demonic rock dynasty, he wouldn't have tried to snatch the heavenly talisman tree in the first place. Since they were already enemies, what difference did a bit more animosity make? Thus, Lin Dong ignored Chen Mu's shout. His lips curled in a smirk as he firmly grasped the glowing orb in his hand. The moment Lin Dong's hand touched the orb, it trembled violently. A powerful burst of energy exploded outward, pushing back Chen Mu and the others, who were charging toward him. However, Lin Dong, who was holding the orb, felt nothing. A pillar of light extended from the orb, quickly enveloping Lin Dong. In the next instant, under the shocked and angry gazes of Chen Mu and the others, Lin Dong's figure mysteriously vanished. As Lin Dong's figure disappeared, the pillar of light began to shrink rapidly. Seeing this, Chen Mu and the others' expressions changed drastically. They accelerated to their maximum speed, trying to rush into the pillar of light. Inside the main hall, figures darted like arrows toward the shrinking pillar of light. However, the pillar was shrinking faster and faster, and it was clear they wouldn't make it in time. Under the gaze of several stunned eyes, the pillar of light was about to disappear with a faint sound. Yet at that moment, a ghostly figure darted out from midair and swiftly entered the pillar, disappearing as well. After this mysterious figure dashed into the pillar of light, it finally dissipated completely. Chen Mu and the others, who had been rushing forward, found themselves grabbing at empty air, left staring blankly at the now empty hall with twisted, sinister expressions. Yuewen and the others didn't look much better. though their expressions weren't as twisted as Chenmu's. They merely sighed in disappointment. Seeing this, it was evident that the glowing orb was a teleportation point. Lin Dong and the mysterious figure who entered it had likely been transported to the place where the real ancient key was located. "I'll wait right here. I don't believe you won't appear again." Chenmu's eyes were bloodshot, his face contorted like a gambler who had lost everything. His voice, filled with murderous intent, sent shivers down people's spines. The moment his body vanished, Lin Dong felt a wave of dizziness spreading from deep within his mind, and everything before him went dark. This sudden change startled him, but fortunately, the darkness didn't last long. It abruptly shattered, replaced by a dim glow. What appeared before Lin Dong was an expansive plaza, forged from black rock, exuding an ancient and profound aura. Yet, Lin Dong's eyes didn't linger on it for long. His gaze locked onto the center of the plaza, where he saw a figure sitting cross-legged. The sudden appearance of the figure made Lin Dong tense up for a moment, but he quickly realized that there was no life force coming from it. Clearly, this was a corpse. Lin Dong moved forward and appeared before the remains. His eyes quickly glanced over it, and he was surprised to find that the remains were quite well preserved. If it weren't for the absence of any signs of life, one might mistake it for a living person. However, what surprised Lin Dong even more was that this corpse bore a striking resemblance to the statues in the stone hall. This person must be the owner of the stone hall. Lin Dong's eyes flickered as he shifted his gaze downward. There, between the skeleton's hands, he saw an ancient, yellowish key. The key's material seemed peculiar. It looked like wood but wasn't quite wood, with strange patterns faintly visible on its surface, emanating a faint, unsettling energy. The ancient key. The moment Lin Dong laid eyes on this ancient wooden key, his gaze turned fiery. Though he had seen several strange keys in the stone hall earlier, as soon as he saw this one, he knew he had finally found the real deal. A surge of excitement filled Lin Dong's eyes. Without the slightest hesitation, he reached out and grabbed the ancient key. However, just as Lin Dong reached out, a sharp gust of wind suddenly appeared from behind him. This unexpected turn of events caught even Lin Dong off guard for a moment. But he quickly reacted, his hand twitching as a red light shot out from his palm, transforming into a burly figure that appeared behind him. A crisp sound spread through the air as a powerful gust swept through, pushing Lin Dong back several steps. His expression grew serious as he looked up to see who was in front of him, and he was immediately taken aback. The figure that appeared wasn't Chenmu, Yuewen, or any of the others he had expected. Instead, it was a woman dressed in a red gown. The woman had a tall, slender figure, accentuating her graceful curves. Her long hair was as black as ink, flowing like a waterfall, and her face was as captivating as a blooming peach blossom, exuding a striking charm. Her narrow, almond-shaped eyes were moist and gleaming, stirring the hearts of those who gazed upon them. This was the first time Lin Dong had seen such a beautiful woman in the ancient battlefield. "Give a little brother, this big sister also has her eyes on that ancient key. Why don't you give it to me?" The red-dressed woman smiled sweetly at Lin Dong, her voice so soft and delicate that even such an unreasonable request seemed to provoke no anger. Lin Dong responded with a dry chuckle. Fortunately, he wasn't someone who lost his head at the sight of a beautiful woman, and he knew full well that this woman was definitely not to be underestimated. To be able to enter here before someone like Chenmu already indicated her extraordinary skills. Moreover, during the chaotic battle in the hall earlier, Lin Dong hadn't noticed her presence at all. Clearly, this woman had been hiding in the shadows from the start, watching the show. Such strength and cunning were not qualities possessed by an ordinary woman. "Since this sister is so straightforward, perhaps you shouldn't take my possession? That wouldn't be very ladylike." Lin Dong chuckled, his gaze subtly shifting to the ancient key in the skeleton's hands. "I'm no lady, you know, so there's no need for me to act ladylike. In fact, I prefer being an unreasonable demoness." The red-dressed woman laughed, her delicate hands gently gripping a fiery red whip that appeared in her grasp. She lightly flicked the whip, and it seemed to explode the very air around it. The rippling energy caused Lin Dong's eyes to narrow slightly. This woman's strength might even surpass Chenmu's. The woman continued to smile sweetly at Lin Dong, her fiery whip coiling around her like a snake. An invisible pressure radiated from her, making Lin Dong feel a heaviness in his body. This woman was no pushover. I'm sure Chenmu and the others are still waiting outside. Even if you get the ancient key, you probably won't make it out, Lin Dong said, his eyes shifting. Chenmu? The demonic rock dynasty? Upon hearing this, the red-dressed woman's lips curled slightly in disdain and arrogance. However, she didn't say much more, merely keeping her eyes on Lin Dong with a smile. Little brother, are you going to give up the ancient key, or do you want to have some fun with me? I think it might be a bit difficult for you to stop me with just your spirit puppet. If you want the ancient key that badly, it would be quite unchivalrous of me to keep fighting over it, Lin Dong shrugged. His words caused the woman's lips to curl into a smile, but in her heart, she looked down on Lin Dong. She wasn't fond of men who gave up too easily. Well then, thank you, little brother. Though she thought this, the red-dressed woman didn't show it. She smiled charmingly, and with a flick of her whip, it coiled around the ancient key in the skeleton's hands. However, just as her whip flicked out, the blood spirit puppet that had been standing silently nearby suddenly shot forward. Its fierce punch, filled with power, struck directly toward the red-dressed woman without any hesitation. The whip had already been released, and it was too late to pull back and defend. However, the woman was no ordinary foe. With a nimble retreat, she skillfully dodged the blood spirit puppet's attack. At the same time, her whip was knocked off course, landing on the floor beside the skeleton and creating a glaring crack. Just as the whip missed its mark, Lin Dong's figure appeared beside the skeleton with lightning speed. He glanced at the red-dressed woman, whose beautiful eyes were now narrowed with a dangerous glint, and smiled. Apologies, but to me, the ancient key is still more tempting than you. With those words, his hand shot out, grabbing the ancient key without hesitation.